What's up, drum nerds? We're going to talk about some snare tuning today. Last few days, I posted a couple videos of this snare in a mega fat tuning, and I've got a lot of good response. A lot of people really liking it and asking me, how do I get that tone? And so I'm going to do a quick little tutorial rundown about how I do that, okay? Just real quick about this snare. It is a Slingerland 14 by 10 marching snare from the 1950s. Okay, and right now it's not in that fat tuning. It's in a medium low-ish kind of range, and we're going to talk about, we're going to use this as a starting point, and we're going to work down to that real low fat sound. I'm going to talk about the different steps I'm doing. So here's how it sounds right now. Okay, fairly low, medium low-ish kind of range, just wide open, batter head, nice and in tune with itself. Okay, this is a pretty achievable sound that a lot of guys could be able to get and hopefully use as a starting point and kind of follow these steps with me here. This is a coated Emperor on the top. Okay, this is my favorite head for this kind of tuning. I don't like the heads that have like the built-in muffling rings and stuff on them. I would rather do that muffling myself externally than have it already in the head. I feel like heads that have that built-in muffling just end up sounding really thick and plasticky. There's this like plastic kind of layer on top of the tone always that just bugs me. Okay, so I'd rather use a head that's not muffled at all. But a thicker two-ply head like an Emperor is gonna take a really low tuning and stay nice and meaty. Okay, talk about the snare side head real fast. Just to show you what kind of tension it's at. Okay, that's fairly tight, not as tight as a lot of guys run it, but I feel like that range helps this tone out real nice. With the bottom head muted, here's the top. Okay, it's kind of my starting point. I'm going to turn the snares on, and we're going to work down from there. Okay, this first step, basically what I'm going for, I'm going to be working it down in small increments, and I want to try to get it to where the feel of the head when I hit it has this softer, gushier kind of response to it, as opposed to the nice, like, firm, crisp kind of response that it has right now. So I'm just waiting for it to get down to that gushier response feel, okay? Doing like quarter turns each time. Okay, that was all the lugs, and I'm going to take it down a little bit more. We're starting to get there, and you can hear a difference too when it hits this gushier range. Going down smaller increments, just real tiny turns. Okay, this is kind of what we want. I don't want it to get so low that it becomes dead and it starts to lose resonance. So there's a fine line between that. So if you get down that far, then you want to bring it back up a little bit. Okay, my lugs are pretty out of tune. I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to even them out. And I'm going to see where I'm at. I'm going to find the lug that's the highest pitch, and I'm going to bring up the others to match it, okay? And that's going to bring the whole pitch of the head up just a bit. Okay, and you don't have to get super precise with this step because we're about to put a bunch of dampening on there, and as soon as we do that, that's gonna shift these lug point pitches around too, and it's gonna you can your work would be for naught if you got them all perfectly in tune right here. But we at least want to tame some of those nasty overtones out of there. So that's I think it's gonna work. All right. The next step is the dampening. Okay, and this is where the real magic happens with this fat tone. Okay. There are a lot of different dampening devices on the market right now. Some are pretty cheap, like moon gels, and some are crazy expensive, like the snare weight stuff. I like to use things that I have just laying around. We're going to use gaff tape and a Kleenex. Okay, revolutionary, I know. So I like the Kleenex. And I like to use this as like my main source of dampening anytime I want a fat sound. Because I think something about having like a thicker, softer surface pressed against the head, that still lets the head vibrate really nice while still being dampened. It just somehow, as soon as I put this on, it always just brings out a lot of fatness from the head, as opposed to if I just put tape all over it. That really kills the vibration of the head. So I think this lets it vibrate a little bit more naturally. So I like to I folded this up into a little square. Okay, and I'm going to tape it down with some gaff tape. I want to get this just a little bit wider than my square is. And I'm going to pick a random point on the head, and I'm going to tape it down. Okay. Let's hear it. Okay. Fat, but very choked. Okay. The way we fix that choked sound is with the snare wires. One thing about how I like to do this tone is I always like to run my snare wires really loose, because I feel like it simulates for an acoustic kind of situation, where you're not necessarily gonna have a whole bunch of post-processing kind of stuff. You just want a really good sounding fat snare by itself. I feel like you can simulate a long reverb trail with the snare wire response. Okay, so check it out. Okay, that's getting there. So that sounds pretty good on its own. There's a lot of ringing overtones, that linger on after the initial attack. So you hear the psh, but then you hear a woo, kind of lingering on after that. So that's the kind of stuff we want to dry up a little bit. So I'm going to get another piece of tape, fairly long, and I'm going to put it along the edge right here. Okay, let's hear that. All right, now we're getting drier. I'm going to try one more. Basically, this sound is made by a really low pitch that's really dry, that still has some nice body to it and has some nice reverb. If we were in the studio, you could have just a super dry snare sound and add that reverb later, but we're not here. I'm just in my practice room. There's no mic on the snare, okay? The only mics going on are this overhead here and a kick mic, and the mic's built into my camera. So what you're hearing is the natural snare sound in the room, okay? And so I'm trying to replicate a nice long reverb trail, and that's what I'm going to do with snare wires. That's pretty short. I'm going to give it a little bit more. Okay. Okay. This is okay. I think it can go lower, and we're going to get just a little bit lower, gushier, fat kind of stuff. So I'm going to go around and work on evening out the lugs again. But this time I'm going to find the lugs that are lower pitched, and I'm going to use those as my goal. And the ones that are higher, I'm going to take them down to match the lower ones, okay? Okay, so this is the lowest one I found so far. Okay. Oh man, here we go. All right. That's too tight on the snare. See, that sounds choked now. All right, so I'm going to go looser. All right. All right. That's pretty rocking. Okay, so you may be wondering, how do I get one of these snares? Are they crazy expensive? And the answer is no. That's the amazing part. I paid $175 for this drum, and that was shipped from eBay. And that just blows my mind. Like the tone that you just heard coming from a drum that only costed $175. There are entry-level snares that you can pay more than that for. But there's just like a wealth of amazing tones in these old drums that most people don't want anymore. And if you just scan eBay, Reverb, Craigslist, just kind of keep checking those and be searching for vintage marching snares. Or sometimes they'll go by parade drums. But lots of good deals to be had. Some this cheap, sometimes you'll see them in the $350 kind of range, and that could be fine too. But if you just kind of keep an eye out, you can find some really good deals that come up. This bass drum is also a vintage marching bass drum. It's a 26x10 vintage Ludwig from the 70s, and oh, I love it. See, it's dual tension, which I need to mention that with the snare as well. But dual tension meaning that both of the heads, you can adjust separately, which is a totally normal thing for modern drums. But a lot of these vintage marching drums are single tension, which means that both like the heads are tied together. So like when this snare originally came to me, it was single tension. This is one of the original tension rods. You see, it's really long, and so you would adjust the bottom head. You turn from the top head, but it would pull up the bottom head with it too, which can be super cool for a lot of sounds. But most modern drum tunings need you to be able to, at least most modern snare tunings need you to have separate control. Like right now, we've got the bottom head super tight and the top head super loose. Okay, you couldn't do that with a single tension drum. Also, when this drum came to me, it had these wood hoops on it, which I love, and it just pains me to not have them on the drum. But they really dry it out and give it a lot more mellower vibe, which again can be so cool for certain tones. But for this fat tone that's really got a lot of bite to it, the triple flange hoops really do that better. And so these were some hoops that I had that I switched out. I also bought some new lugs and drilled new holes and put those in that was able to convert it to a dual tension drum. Okay. If you don't want to have to do that much work on a drum, I would suggest looking for one that's already dual tension and that already has metal hoops. You can get some really, really cool tones from the wood hoop single tension versions too. You just won't be able to get this kind of tone. But a lot of these old drums are mahogany, which this is. And that's a tone wood that just lends itself to really low, warm, rich kind of tones, and it does this kind of thing really, really well. So if you have any more questions, feel free to leave a comment, and I will respond. And thanks so much for hanging with me. Good luck if you're chasing this kind of sound. I hope this was helpful, and we'll see you.